Hey everybody, this is of course not the Dr. Ray that you're used to seeing, but I've been a little under the weather, and I am revising this last couple of sections here. I'm keeping this week's section pretty short because I would really like you to begin looking at your final drafts this week, right? You've got your drafts in. Hopefully, you've seen the commentary that I've made. But I do want to address what we're going to be doing on the next 2 weeks, and then what we're going to be doing our final week. So we are looking this week at Genet and structures of power. You're being sort of introduced to Genet, and again, you're going to go back to that Martin Esslin PowerPoint and look at Jean Genet. And this week are going to be prepping to look at the balcony. Next week is going to be the balcony, and the week after Thanksgiving is going to be wrapping up the balcony. And so I know it's going to be a little bit of a time crunch at the end, so this is a good week to sort of continue working on and wrapping your work for your final presentations or your final papers, the final thing that you're turning in, whatever that happens to be. So let's talk about Genet. Let's talk about structures of power. When I did this the last 2 years, when we started talking about this the week of Thanksgiving, we had a very short week, and so it was sort of a throwaway. But I think it's good this year that we have a longer week, and we can still look at this. It's still going to be a short video, but I want to talk about what Genet is trying to do when he writes The Balcony, when he has done his other play called The Blacks, when he did his play called The Screens. Genet is in a similar fashion to Eugene Ionesco trying to address the idea of power structures, and the idea of what makes power legitimate. With Ionesco, the thing that we saw was primarily that power was given to the rhinoceros based on people's willingness to accept them, right? That Stanley / Berenger just never really accepted that they were powerful, in charge, and legitimate as rulers, and everybody else who had sort of conformed to society was happy to do so. We get another look in a very similar fashion at that this week in starting to look at Genet. What I want you to do when you look at Esslin, one of the things that you will see in the Esslin section on Jean Genet is that he, from a very early age, is very skeptical of power and the legitimacy of what power is and where it comes from. Genet talks about the fact that when he was very young, he was arrested for something he did not do. And he decided at that point in time that if he was going to be labeled as something, that he would take it on. He would decide to do it. And so he became a bit of a criminal. Now, the story, of course, comes from Genet himself. Did he actually not do what he was accused of doing for what he went to prison? It's dubious, right? We're not really sure. But what we do know is that he did turn his life to criminal activity for quite a while until he decided he was sort of done with that and left prison for the last time and decided he wasn't going to go back, and spent his time in prison writing, and then once he got out, spent his time producing plays and writing even more plays. So what do we see with Jean Genet? What do we see him say about power? This is one of the lectures that I think is really interesting, in that we talk about something that can be a little bit scary, a little bit intimidating, and that can get a little bit too far one direction or the other. When we talk about legitimacy of power, we are questioning whether the structures of power that we have in our lives, that we see around us, are legitimate or not. When we take out a $10 bill, that it is worth $10. That if we go into a store and give somebody that money, that they will accept it, and they will accept it as $10. And it seems like a small thing, right? But this is the beginning of sort of our giving legitimacy and power to things that maybe don't necessarily deserve that power. Are we looking at our money in the same way that all the people in Rhinoceros, except for Stanley and Berenger, were looking at the Rhinoceros, right? Um, are we simply believing in something that shouldn't have the value that it does? I'm certainly not suggesting anarchy. That would be very irresponsible and not a great idea. But what I will tell you is that Genet sees a world in which every single structure needs to be questioned. We are going to see a play set in a brothel in which the very structure of society has crumbled. And because this brothel has been a house of illusions, because Madame Irma has set this brothel up to serve the fantasies of her male clients, and has been able to create scenarios that feel very legitimate for the people participating in them, albeit in their case for sexual gratification, that these people who have fetishized being certain powerful people, priests, generals, judges, can pull off the appearance to the point where society sees them and believes and gives them the power to be those people and to take on those roles. What Genet really suggests here is that as we question power, we become less and less beholden to it. We become ourselves more powerful because we begin to put the power in ourselves. Now, am I suggesting, right, that Genet would like people to go out and simply riot in the streets and simply become police officers and simply pretend that they are, people who are in roles that they have not been assigned? No. But I am saying that I think this play presents an interesting idea that when we are in a scenario the same that we see in the balcony, in which power has been questioned and is crumbled around us, or no longer feels legitimate, that we have decisions to make, that we have things to think about, right? I would like you to start there this week as you read the Esslin PowerPoint, as you consider the beginning of the balcony. In fact, I would suggest starting to read the balcony this week. It's a slightly longer play, and it feels very unusual when you start it. Understanding how the play works is really important, but reading it is the even more important thing. We have two versions of it. You're going to see one that is a link to a film version. That will pop up. In fact, I'll probably put that up this week so you can see it. And the second is the play version that you got in the books that you've purchased. That one also, probably the more important of the two. It gives you a much better idea of what the play should be like. In the second video, because I am going to cut this into two different videos, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we are trying to do with our final projects and what I would like you to do this week and into next week. So, be right back.